Scourge Hook Perks. So majestic. So powerful. So bizarrely named. Look, how can a hook be a scourge? It's a hook. I mean, it could be that a scourge is what they call a group of survivors, like they're the scourge on the internet. But sure, the survivors get put on scourge hooks. But what about the rest of us killers? Well, where I come from, we didn't have anything to be scourged over. But maybe it'd be safer if I just showed them what I mean by the Scourge Hooks. Because it can be all fine and dandy to talk about Scourge Hook perks on paper. But putting them into practice, that's something. Please remain seated until the end of this presentation. And welcome back to another video where I look at a group of perks from Dead by Daylight. Last time it was exhaustion perks, and there were a lot of them, and they left me feeling exhausted on the tail end of it. So we're jumping the ditch to look at a chunk of killer perks, courtesy of some of my currently most played killers, which will definitely be a kick-up, including Singularity, who's on screen right now, will be one of the example killers. The others you'll see pop up along the way. So, as the title and intro said, we're going to be looking at Scourge Hook perks. And there's not as many of them this time as there were last time with the exhaustion perks. So it means I can spend a bit more time talking about each of them individually and really get into the nitty-gritty. Before we do, however, there's a few general rules I need to mention that will apply to every Scourge Hook. Scourge Hooks will make 4 random hooks in a trial Scourge Hooks at the start of a match. There is no protection against Scourge Hooks spawning clumped together, so you just have to rely on the luck of the draw. And Scourge Hooks can be identified from a white aura when you're carrying a survivor instead of the normal colour you have it set as. And when you look at it at close physically, it'll have a sort of black entity smoke effect swirling around it. So you can tell at a glance which hook's a Scourge before you even have to pick a survivor up, which is an incredibly nice quality of life feature. Basement hooks will never be one of the 4 Scourge hooks. Put a little asterisk and remember that I said this, because it will come back up later in regards to never. And despite how the perks wording might make it seem, running multiple Scourge hooks will not actually increase the amount of base Scourge hooks that spawn at the start of a trial over 4. And most importantly, these hooks can still be sabotaged by survivor perks and items, so don't assume they're immune for that because they're regular Scourge hooks. So sit back, relax, and let's get started with the most iconic of all of the Scourge hooks. I'm going to be completely honest. If you've spent pretty much any amount of time over like 20 minutes playing Dead by Daylight, you will have played against Scourge Hook Pain Resonance at least 10 times a week, and it's probably not even close. Scourge Hook Pain Resonance is a perk from Carmina Mora, the artist, from the A Portrait of a Murder chapter, the same perk chapter that Jonah Vasquez came from in the previous video. And it's probably one of the most consistently strong perks for killer in Dead by Daylight currently, so as of 9.4.2 I think we're at now. When the trial starts, in addition to the 4 random Scourge hooks that spawn, this perk will gain 4 tokens, which get spent as you hook survivors. The first time you hook a survivor on a Scourge hook, a token will be consumed. Then, depending on if a survivor is holding onto a generator or not, one of 2 things will happen. If there's no survivor on the generator, the gen will silently explode and lose about 20% of its progress, and it will actively begin regressing, similar to if you have kicked it. If there is a survivor working the generator, however, in addition to all of that, the survivor will scream without giving you any other visual notification as to where that scream came from. So you have to be able to pay attention to the rough direction screams came from in comparison to where there are generator auras to get information from Scourge Hook alone. There are a few other important factors to consider when you're running Pain Res. If there are 0 generators with progression when a survivor is Scourge hooked for the first time, a token will not be spent. The token will only be spent if it's valid for the token to be spent and there's an active generator with progress. And speaking of actives, if the generator with the most progress is an invalid target, so if the generator has been blocked or has no kicks remaining in it, it will move to the generator with the next highest progress and continue down until it can hit a generator. It's a perk everyone and their mother will run one way or the other, and it's one of those that generally isn't a bad option to run outside of incredibly niche situations that it's really worth bringing anyway, because unless you have survivors actively running Repressed Alliance and knowing when to activate Repressed Alliance to stop pain res hitting the generator they're working on, just bring the damn perk.
Here you can see the footage of how Scourge hooking works from the survivor's point of view, as it's easier to show here. As you can see, a survivor has gone down and is being taken to a hook. And as they get hooked, we do not let go of the generator, resulting in the generator exploding, and as you can see, both of us screaming, and the result being a much more loud explosion and visible sparks. Whereas here, with this survivor getting carried to a hook, we're not quite sure how close the hook is. So we're not going to send the final chunk of generator progress until after the Scourge Hook token has been spent, meaning that the resulting explosion is much quieter and it is much harder for the killer to track the information provided. And as you can see in these photos here, the generator progression is very directly tied to how much damage pain res hooks will do. In the first clip where the generator exploded and we were still hanging on to it, the gen was less progress, resulting in less total information or less total progress being taken away from the generator. Whereas in the second one, where the gen was nearly complete, it took a lot more damage because we had a lot more progress on the generator. Now that that mouthful of a perk was over, let's look at another one. Scourge Hook Floods of Rage is a perk from Sadako Yamamura, the Onryo, from the Sadako Rising chapter. Thankfully, this perk is much easier to explain the basics of. When a survivor is pulled off of a Scourge Hook, this perk activates and the aura of all other survivors are revealed to you for 7 seconds. This does not include the unhooked survivor, and all normal forms of aura blocking will work as normal for the other 3 survivors. This perk has potential to be absolutely nutty in the right hands. With its huge 7 seconds of aura reveal, it's a very simple perk as well. There's not much else to talk about with it, other than this is what it looks like when the perk activates. As you can see here, the survivor gets unhooked, and I look at the 2 survivors that are standing up on a hill, and they start bardic inspirationing for me, which was, something fun.
Scourge Hook Jagged Compass is a perk from the Houndmaster, Portia May, from the Doomed Course chapter, and is one of those perks that kind of has 2 camps I've seen people form in if they talk about Jagged Compass more than offhandedly. One camp of people that insist this perk is absolutely broken powerful, and some insist that it's next to useless and needs a buff. When you hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook, the aura of the generator with the most progress is highlighted in a different color. And for a bonus point here, if the generator with the most progress changes during that 10 seconds, so does the aura. So the aura will jump to the generator with the most progress. Now, on its own, this is kind of bad, but when you look at the other important little detail that it has, it becomes a hell of a lot better. Survivors unhooked from regular hooks convert the hook unhooked from into a Scourge Hook. Fuck, that's a lot of hook to say. This helps with the biggest downside that all of the Scourge Hook perks have, and it's the RNG aspect. There is no protection to prevent your Scourge Hooks from spawning in one corner of the map, and the survivors just realizing that and playing around it, so the ability to convert hooks into Scourge Hooks is very helpful. This also activates any Scourge Hook which has their perk effect activate on unhook, no matter what hook you put them on, which makes the pair of them much more useful than you'd think. Here is an example of the perk's primary effect working in a live game. In this game, I've downed this survivor, and it's right in front of a Scourge Hook, and I utilize the opportunity to take the 3 gen that I have controlled and turn it into a 4 gen. Thanks to Jagged Compass showing me that the main building had the most progress, I know for a fact there's someone on it. and checking the camera does show me that yes, there's a survivor there, but the camera's been biopodded. Coming up through main, I am able to utilize the information that the survivor had to have left away from the 3-gen to keep it further under control and turn this 4-gen into a completely unwinnable situation for the survivors to get out of. Scourge Hook Monstrous Shrine is a general perk that no killer teaches, and it is unbelievably average. But what was that little thing I said earlier? Will never be one of the 4 Scourge Hooks. Put a little asterisk and remember that I said this, because it will come back up later in regards to never. Yeah, this is the later. Monstrous Shrine also tries to help fix the problem of Scourge Hook RNG, but in a much different way. Monstrous Shrine makes the basement hooks also Scourge Hooks, giving you an additional 4 Scourge Hooks at either shack or main building depending on where the basement spawns. As for its primary effect, when you are more than 24 meters away from a survivor on a Scourge Hook, their time till sacrifice decays 20% faster. So it's a perk that simultaneously discourages hook camping on the killer side for once, and one that also forces survivors to make decisions faster, which could potentially lead to them making misplays. It's an alright perk.
And this is a side-by-side comparison footage of 2 different hooks in the same control game. On the left, we have a Sable that has been put on a basement Scourge Hook, courtesy of Monstrous Shrine. On the right, we have a Steve that has been put on a regular hook. And as you can see here, there is a huge difference between the time that it takes for the timer to start going down on the Sable's hook on the left versus the Steve's on the right. Assuming you get immediately away from the hook, you have 20% reduction on all 70 seconds of each hook stage timer, which is roughly 14 seconds. So it brings down, assuming you can immediately get away, it brings down the 70-second hook state to a roughly 56-second, just under a minute, which it can make survivors make really bad decisions due to the time pressure. So before I start talking about the next one, I need to clarify. If you owned the Hellraiser chapter before its removal, this perk will be called Gift of Pain. If you did not have the chance to get the chapter, or you started playing after the chapter was delisted, this perk will be called Weeping Wounds. For the sake of auditorial consistency, I will refer to this perk as Gift of Pain. It is what the perk shows up as in my inventory as I own the chapter, but I will make sure to try my best to include Weeping Wounds wherever I can underneath the Gift of Pain in smaller text so that you can still understand what perk I am talking about. With that said, Scourge Hook Gift of Pain is a perk taught by Elliot Spencer, the Cenobite, from the Hellraiser chapter, or it is Scourge Hook Weeping Wounds, a general perk that is freely available in the Bloodweb. This perk functions as a side grade to another really good anti-heal perk, Sloppy Butcher. It has more benefits, but a harder activation condition, which gives you pros and cons and makes it more of a side grade, neither an up or downgrade. When a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge Hook, or a regular hook if you have Jagged Compass, they gain both the Hemorrhage and Mangled status for 90 seconds, and when they're fully healed, they repair generators and heal other survivors 16% slower until they're injured again. This perk is insanely powerful and can slow the game down to a crawl if you let it to, potentially bringing the whole team down 16% if left unchecked. And that just lasts until you're injured again. It's a huge lose-lose for survivors, as you either need to stay injured when playing against some very dangerous killers that could potentially just one-tap you, or get healed, deal with the 16% repair speed, or get healed, then injured, then escape again. You have no real winning situation outside of not getting hooked at all, which isn't always easy for certain killers to do. Here is what the perk's effects look like on the survivor side. I have just lost a chase with this Demogorgon, and my teammate is about to come in for the unhook, and as soon as they do, they will begin to heal me, and you will see that with the Gift of Pain, it gives me both Mangled and Hemorrhage, which slows down the heal speed, and if I'd have had Resurgence, it would have taken away some of the heal bonus that perk gives, But healing under hook is still fairly safe here thanks to breakdown. But as you can see, the healing is done, and when the healing finishes here, you will see that I will still have the little Gift of Pain perk icon that pops up next to my big perks. You can see it there now. That means I have a 16% reduction in gen and heal speed until I am injured again. And as you can see here, the bar slows down quite a lot. It's taking away nearly a fifth of your gen speed, which it stacks up over time, and it makes it really hard for survivors to fix gens if they're trying to stealth out after you've hooked them for the first time. And finally is Scourge Hook Hangman's Trick, a perk from Amanda Young, the pig, from the Saw chapter. It was actually not a Scourge Hook when it originally was released. Neither was Monstrous Shrine, but Hangman's Trick feels more notable in that it was once not a Scourge Hook, you know? When you're carrying a survivor, the auras of all survivors within 16 meters of Scourge Hooks are revealed to you. And if a survivor starts sabotaging a hook, you get a notification before the hook breaks. This perk is kind of bad, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the only Scourge Hook perk that does nothing when you hook or a survivor gets unhooked, and its effective aura reveal isn't even all that good. Like, the only thing this perk has that's kind of unique is that you get notified when the hook sabotage animation begins and when it finishes, which could be the difference between making another hook or not. I mean, it's something. The only real other use I see for Hangman's Trick is in situations like this clip here, where I down a survivor and pick them up. And as soon as I've picked up the survivor, I see the aura of another survivor go running to the Scourge Hook to take it down. Which means that unfortunately I don't get my pain res, but I can still just go slap it on another hook behind me, which I might not have made if I didn't know that the other Scourge Hook had been sabotaged already. Now, same as the last video that I did, I will be going over each perk and giving a few perk synergies that you can find along the way. I will try my best to find at least one perk that can synergize with the 6 Scourge Hook perks that I've mentioned here that isn't just Jagged Compass, but, you know, it's a good Scourge Hook support perk, so that's going to pop up a lot. And I will rank the perks on a scale, like I did last time, from like F or D up to S. And bringing up the sad bottom of the barrel is probably the perk I struggled the most with finding a synergy that would work for it. Hangman's Trick is a tragically bad perk. Its only real use is from a mechanic that's outdated as hell with sabotaging hooks, and ever since the change to how hooks spawn, it's a lot harder to get unhookable situations. The original reason this perk was passively usable isn't even part of the perk's effects anymore, so what is there really to talk about? Okay, well, the perk could be... No, wait, no, that wouldn't work. There is a synergy... But is there really, though? It's not. But it could work with... No, it really couldn't, could it? You could use... No, that doesn't work either. Is that it? Is there no possible way for Hangman's Trick to get any value outside of incredibly contrived situations that I had to set up with the help of other people to show off? Behavior wouldn't make a perk next to completely useless and then forget about it for close to 3 years, would they? There has to be something it can work with, right? Behavior wouldn't just do that to one of their licensed characters' perks, would they? there might be something. A singular way for this perk to get any sort of value in a single build that doesn't feel contrived. Jagged Compass. If you run Jagged Compass, you can expand your net of Scourge Hooks. And if you manage to get Scourge Hooks near the 3 gen or around gens that you want to protect in a cluster, you could, in theory, get a web of hooks that give you information on where to go every time you hook a survivor. And if you're a killer that's fast enough to be able to utilize that information, it could work. This is kind of the only case that I could conjure up the Hangman's trick that isn't just, bad. And the other people I asked about this just said, don't use the perk. It's not worth it. There's no situation that it's good. So this is the best you've got, people. Hangman's trick suffers from being an entirely outdated perk trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist anymore. If the perk did something else to help prevent hook sabotages, such as bringing back the old effect of reducing the time hooks were sabotaged, I think it'd be made a hell of a lot better. But as it is, it's not discouraging survivors from sabotaging. It's not even discouraging survivors from being near hooks. It's a perk that I can resoundingly say is really not worth the sum of its parts, even as a meme. Run it with Jagged Compass, Pain Res, and Gift of Pain if you have to run it, but ideally just don't use it at all. It's not a very good perk. Right, let's get to talking about actually usable perks. Bloody hell. Monstrous Shrine actually has a few niche uses and builds. Obviously, you've got your full Scourge Hook build, with my picks being Pain Res, Floods of Rage, and Jagged Compass. Then, if you're playing a killer with high enough mobility, you could run Monstrous Shrine with Make Your Choice, Devour Hope, and Friends Till the End to be a hyper-mobile threat that gets away from the hook fast to trigger Make Your Choice and Devour Hope, with Friends to the End giving you a direction to go in. The killer I would use for this sort of build would be Dredge. Thanks to his super high mobility teleporting around lockers, he can get fairly close fairly quickly to his Friends to the End target. And thanks to Monstrous Shrine's secondary effect, there is one more semi-use for this in basement builds. If you run Agitation, Iron Grasp, and Monstrous Shrine, your 4th perk slot is opened up for whatever choice of Scourge Hook perk you want. But ideally, you'd want either Pain Res or Gift of Pain to slow down the game a little bit more and potentially get another survivor down into the basement. Monstrous Shrine may be a niche perk, but not an outwardly powerful one. It's passably alright, and on killers with high mobility, like Blight, Ghoul, or Dredge, it can force survivors to make decisions faster, potentially allowing you to catch survivors out in bad places at bad times. I'm really sad to have to place Jagged Compass this low. It's become one of my favourite perks while experimenting for this video, but it's really only worth using in conjunction with other Scourge Hook perks. And while you have the crowd of people that swear up and down Jagged Compass works amazingly with Singularity, specifically so you know what camera to look at, realistically, what group of people are going to be doing a generator with a biopod pointing at the generator without whacking it with an EMP? With that said, if you use Jagged Compass, ideally you'd want either Floods of Rage, Gift of Pain, or both to get the full effects of those perks all the time. Or Pain Res to not need to listen out for where the screen comes from if a survivor is working the generator, or if they're smart and they dodge it, to know what generator it is. Outside of full Scourge Hook builds, there's really not much else for Jagged Compass to do, unfortunately. The closest you can really get using it out of full Scourge is running it in half Scourges to support another Scourge Hook perk while running another perk build primary. It's just kind of how it happens that the perk made to supplement Scourge Hooks doesn't really work well outside of it. Floods of Rage is a fairly standardly strong perk that is limited by the existence of other aura read perks that do its job better or more consistently, but that doesn't mean there isn't some good niches you can run with it. Obviously, you've got your full Scourge Hook build, Gift of Pain, Jagged Compass, Pain Res. We've talked about this in the Jagged Compass section. However, it also can do a full Aura Read build with Lethal Pursuer, Darkness Revealed, and Barbecue and Chili. It works quite well on range killers like Huntress, doubly so if she's running her Eerie Hatchet add-on, or high mobility killers like Dredge, Blight, Ghoul, that can get places fairly quickly. Additionally, Floods of Rage could also find a semi-niche in countering people blocking Barbecue and Chili auras by hiding in lockers. Most people anticipate Barbecue and Chili. People don't really think about Floods of Rage. And as I've mentioned before, as Floods of Rage works on unhook instead of hook, it pairs great with Jagged Compass to make the perk activate on any hook. Floods of Rage is a perk that I can't really do much more talking about simply because it's a very simple effect on a very simple activation condition. There's no fancy artsy-fartsy that I need to talk about with it, but that's what makes it simple yet effective. Staying in the same tier bracket, Gift of Pain also sits in B+. It's a mighty strong perk, but similar to Floods of Rage, is limited by its activation. But the perk works quite well with other anti-heal perks. So, if you want to go all in on keeping survivors injured and slow, Thanatophobia, Leverage, A Nurse's Calling, Coulrophobia, and Alien Instinct all work quite nicely with Gift of Pain. This perk also synergizes with Jagged Compass and Floods of Rage, as I have aforementioned already, as Jagged Compass makes Gift of Pain activate on every single hook. This perk also has a nice synergy with a perk from another currently absent killer, Dying Light from the Shape, or as it's called now, Culber Weak, as it makes healing even harder, but also baits the Obsession into using their faster heal speed to slow down gen progress. But, you know, Gift of Pain is a really solid perk. It's kept in check somewhat by the fact that it is only on unhook, and if you're not running Jagged Compass, you only have 4 hooks that you can proc it on. But it is certainly one of the most polarizing anti-heal perks, as it really encourages survivors to have to take a no-win situation of either playing injured or playing with a reduced gen speed, which wears off as soon as you're injured again, meaning you would need to get hit and then escape chase again, which not every survivor can do. But of course, I don't think anyone's surprised at what perk is coming next. One of the most versatile and effective perks Dead by Daylight has, it would honestly be harder to find a group of perks that Scourge Hook Pain Resonance doesn't synergize with. And I mean this seriously. Every build can work well. But generally, if you see a Blight, a Nurse, a Ghoul, to an extent a Wesker, or to an extent a Billy running Pain Res, you could be damn sure one of at least Corrupt Intervention, Eruption, Pop Goes the Weasel, Ruin, Blood Favor, or Undying won't be too far behind. These are pretty high tier perks on high tier killers. It's pretty generalist. But this is a perk that I can't recommend, yes, use these specific perks with, because Pain Res is so good across the board that you can kind of run it with anything short of like full gen kick, and even then you can use it as a deterrent to discourage people from sticking that gen, because you might get to that in time to kick it again, sort of thing. But yeah, no, Pain Res is the perk that I see people recommend getting immediately as soon as they can afford the artist, and I honestly agree. It's one of those perks that you're hindering yourself if you're not running in 90% of the builds that you make. Like, it's just a really solid perk, and it's really good to run on all sorts of different killers with all sorts of different playstyles.
So, are Scourge Hook perks any good? To answer that, I'm going to need to divide these 6 perks into 4 camps. Camp 1 is Pain Res, to which I'd say, absolutely, Pain Res is far and away one of your best options for 90% of builds, and it can even work passably in the remaining 10%. It is an incredibly powerful general perk, and you have nothing to lose by not taking it in most situations. Camp 2 is Gift of Pain and Floods of Rage, which I'd say are great perks. They're very powerful and they're very strong in their own niches and use cases, but those niches and use cases do limit them. They're not as generally effective as Pain Res. Camp 3 is Monstrous Shrine and Jagged Compass, which, while very niche, can be the backbone of their entire build if used properly. Jagged Compass and Monstrous Shrine both are perks that enable some stupid shit with other builds, whether that be Scourge Hooks or Basements or whatever. And Camp 4 is, of course, Hangman's Trick, which, the less we say about that perk, the better, in my opinion. But to surmise all of that, there's good, there's bad, there's niche, there's everything in between. What's most important is that you use the perks you like. So I would recommend giving everything a try at least once, except maybe you, and seeing how they work for yourself so you can best utilize them in other builds. Because it's all fine and dandy for me to say what the perks do and show how they function in a controlled environment, but you will need to see how it works for you personally to see if you enjoy it. But remember, at the end of the day, this is just a game, and winning isn't everything. There's no ranked system, so use whatever the hell you want. If you want to run Discordance, Jagged Compass, and Ruin on the Nightmare, go right ahead. I hope this video has taught you something new about at least one of these perks, because it certainly taught me something new when I was making it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. And make sure to stay hydrated. Ta-ta!